Azure governance is a set of mechanisms, processes, and policies that ensure the effective and efficient use of Azure resources. It encompasses various aspects such as cost management, security, compliance, and resource management. The goal is to ensure that resources are used responsibly, securely, and in compliance with organizational policies and regulatory requirements. Effective governance helps organizations to optimize their Azure investments, minimize risks, and achieve their business objectives. Identity management is a critical component of Azure governance. It involves managing user identities and their access to resources. Proper identity management ensures that only authorized users can access specific resources, thereby enhancing security and compliance. Azure Active Directory, Azure AD, is the backbone of identity management in Azure, providing features like single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, and conditional access policies. Azure Active Directory, Azure AD, is a cloud-based identity and access management service. It helps organizations manage user identities and control access to applications and resources. Azure AD supports various authentication methods, including password-based, certificate-based, and token-based authentication. It also integrates with on-premises Active Directory, enabling hybrid identity solutions. Key features include user and group management, role-based access control, RBAC, and security monitoring. Role-based access control, RBAC, is a fundamental feature in Azure that allows organizations to manage access to resources based on roles. RBAC enables administrators to assign specific permissions to users, groups, or applications based on their roles within the organization. This minimizes the risk of unauthorized access and ensures that users have only the permissions they need to perform their tasks. RBAC roles include owner, contributor, reader, and custom roles. Creating and managing RBAC roles involves defining roles and assigning them to users or groups. Azure provides built-in roles, but organizations can also create custom roles to meet specific needs. To create a custom role, administrators define a set of permissions using JSON and assign the role to users or groups. Managing RBAC roles involves regularly reviewing and updating role assignments to ensure they align with organizational policies and user responsibilities. Azure Resource Manager, ARM, is the deployment and management service for Azure. It provides a consistent management layer that enables administrators to create, update, and delete resources in Azure. ARM uses templates to define the infrastructure and configuration of Azure resources, allowing for repeatable and consistent deployments. ARM also supports resource tagging, which helps in organizing and managing resources based on categories such as environment, department, or cost center. Resource locks and policies are essential tools for managing access and ensuring compliance in Azure. Resource locks prevent accidental deletion or modification of critical resources. There are two types of locks: cannot delete and read-only. Azure policies, on the other hand, enforce rules and standards for resource management. Policies can be used to control resource creation, enforce naming conventions, and ensure compliance with regulatory requirements. Both locks and policies help maintain the integrity and security of Azure resources. Azure blueprints enable organizations to define a repeatable set of Azure resources and policies that implement and adhere to organizational standards, patterns, and requirements. Blueprints can include resource groups, role assignments, policy assignments, and ARM templates. They provide a way to deploy and update environments in a consistent and compliant manner. Blueprints are particularly useful for managing large-scale deployments and ensuring that all resources comply with organizational policies. Monitoring and auditing access to Azure resources is crucial for maintaining security and compliance. Azure provides various tools for monitoring and auditing, including Azure Monitor, Azure Security Center, and Azure Activity Log. These tools help administrators track user activities, detect suspicious behavior, and ensure that access policies are being followed. Regular monitoring and auditing help identify potential security risks and ensure that access controls are effective. Conditional access policies in Azure AD provide a way to enforce access controls based on specific conditions. These policies can be used to require multi-factor authentication, restrict access based on location, or enforce device compliance. Conditional access policies help organizations balance security and usability by ensuring that access requirements are met without overly restricting legitimate users. They are a key component of a zero-trust security model. Privileged Identity Management (PIM) in Azure AD helps organizations manage, control, and monitor access to critical resources. PIM allows administrators to assign, activate, and audit privileged roles. It provides just-in-time access, requiring users to request and justify elevated permissions. PIM also includes features like access reviews, alerts, and activity logs, helping organizations minimize the risk of privileged access abuse and ensure compliance with security policies. Access reviews in Azure AD allow organizations to regularly review and certify user access to resources. Administrators can create access review policies to ensure that users have appropriate access based on their roles and responsibilities. Access reviews help identify and remove unnecessary or outdated permissions, reducing the risk of unauthorized access. They also provide an audit trail for compliance purposes, demonstrating that access controls are being actively managed and enforced. Implementing best practices for access management in Azure ensures that resources are secure and compliant. Key best practices include using RBAC to assign permissions, regularly reviewing and updating access controls, implementing multi-factor authentication, and using conditional access policies. Additionally, organizations should monitor and audit access activities, use resource locks and policies to protect critical resources, and leverage tools like PIM and access reviews to manage privileged access. Following these best practices helps organizations maintain a secure and compliant Azure environment. Managing access to Azure resources is a critical aspect of Azure governance. By implementing effective identity and access management practices, organizations can ensure that their Azure environments are secure, compliant, and optimized for performance. The next steps involve applying the concepts and tools discussed in this presentation to your Azure environment. Regularly review and update access controls, monitor access activities, and stay informed about new features and best practices in Azure governance. Continuous improvement and vigilance are key to maintaining a secure and efficient Azure environment.